Okay, let's do this. Welcome back, Digital World. Welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. We are continuing our movie reviews, and we're not going to beat around the bush because I don't want to talk about this for too long. We're reviewing The Flash. It's the newest DC movie from the DC Extended Universe, directed by Andy Muschietti, starring Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, The Flash, with supporting performance mainly by Michael Keaton, returning as the Batman from 1989 and 1992, but not really. It's all lies. Everything's lies. The whole marketing shtick, complete lies. Don't let them fool you. Now, people who are listening to this, I think, are in two very different categories. Either you're on the hype train for this one because of everything you've seen online about this movie, plus what you know about the Flash from the comics and the iconic Flashpoint storyline, which is a definitive DC Comics story, a definitive Flash story that is a really fun way to shake things up. Many different media have done this. The Flash TV show has done it. The Flashpoint Paradox animated movie did it. So it's something that you can be allowed to be very, very excited for, especially with the way everyone's been hyping up this movie, with the decline of the DC Extended Universe in its current form, with that being shuttered down, James Gunn and Peter Safran as the new heads of DC, making their own Superman movies, making their own universe, recasting, refitting, reformatting, which is supposedly taking advantage of the Flashpoint concept to throw everything into a blender from everything you've seen before, have some fun with it before resetting it and heading off with it. James Gunn, our wonderful James Gunn, who's created the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Suicide Squad, beloved superhero movies, has said this is one of the greatest movies he's ever seen. Stephen King, famous Stephen King, who writes those books, has said that I don't like superhero movies, but The Flash, I love this movie. So that's pretty good. You should go and see it. Tom Cruise, notorious Tom Cruise, who doesn't like other movies to be showing when his movies are showing, who doesn't like CG and would rather jump into oblivion on his own motorbike than stand in front of a green screen. He likes The Flash. So if Tom Cruise likes this movie, then it must be one of the greatest movies of all time. Or you're in the other camp, which is being very aware of Ezra Miller as a person. I don't want to go too deep into the Ezra Miller thing. I'm of the, if people seek forgiveness, I'm willing to allow it in certain situations. To give you that information, if you don't know, Ezra Miller plays Barry Allen the Flash. They have been playing the role since a few cameos in the early days and then a substantial role in Justice League. But has had some troubles the last few years. I believe there's a mental health issue, a mental breakdown, but they've been assaulting fans in public, grabbing them by the neck, abducting women, the young girls, I should say, taking them off to a cult somewhere in Hawaii, stalking families, threatening police on social media. Pretty much a complete meltdown. It's been going on for a couple of years, and since then, Ezra Miller, whose pronouns are they, them, I know this. If I say he, him, I do apologize, has said that they acknowledge what's happened is bad, and they are seeking active help for their mental health and are stepping away from the spotlight and all of that. Cool. I'm fine with that. It's if they seek forgiveness and if they prove themselves, all for it. What I'm not a fan of is Hollywood in this manner. Hollywood's complete two-faced bullshittery about this movie, because the movie had already been shot when everything went down with Ezra Miller. Very expensive movie. Obviously, they can't recast Ezra Miller. They can't just write this movie off as a tax write-off like Batgirl, because not only is it one of DC's most iconic characters and supposedly a pivotal point in this DC film universe mess that we call a universe, it would be foolish for them not to release this movie. But because of that, they need people to come and see it. So it's gone from not commenting on it in any way or form to being fully behind this guy as he taunts people on social media, to we all need to forgive and forget, blah, blah, blah. While at the same time, you have other people doing the same sort of things, but luckily for those people, they haven't filmed anything. So they're allowed to be cut off and cast aside and excommunicated and chased off into the wilds of the jungles because we haven't spent any money on you yet. If we've spent a ton of money on you to make a movie, then we support you and we're behind you in improving your mental health. If you haven't got past reading the script yet, we're fine to kick you into a hole and just pretend like we never spoke to you and move on to somebody else. And at the end of the day, people aren't as forgiving as I am. So yeah, Ezra Miller may be looking for forgiveness, but a lot of people can't, and I 100% respect that. I could not get a single person to come see this movie with me, and I did not force anyone to go and see it. I went to an advanced screening for this, and I must say, for a superhero movie, not a lot of people there. It's hard to get past that, especially because this is The Flash. This is Ezra Miller's movie. He's all over it, and if you can't get past that, you're not going to like this movie at all, and it's a difficult job, so I get that completely. So much around this movie. I mean, the advertising alone has been more focused on saying Michael Keaton's Batman is in The Flash, or Supergirl's in The Flash, or remember General Zod from Man of Steel? He's back as well. The marketing has been very much everything except The Flash, which is a lie in and of itself, because what they're pushing to you, saying is the big things about these movies, this movie, I should say, not movies, is minuscule. Very small parts of this particular film. If you think you're going to get a lot of Michael Keaton, you're not. If you think you're going to get a big multiverse traversing, cameo-filled fun like Across the Spider-Verse or Avengers Endgame or anything like that, you're really not. If this had come out and Ezra Miller hadn't tanked his reputation, I think the general reception of this movie would be a lot better, because credit where credit's due, he puts in a lot of work to sell this movie. Double the effort, I should say. Basically, the very simple plot for this movie, because again, I don't want to spoil it. People may want to wait until they can steal this movie for free on the internet, and I highly suggest you do that. But in this movie, we have Ezra Miller's Barry Allen Flash running around helping Batman and Wonder Woman and other members of the Justice League out with certain things. But as is the case with Barry from the comics, he's haunted by childhood tragedy. When he was a young boy, his mother was mysteriously murdered and his dad was framed for the crime. He's always maintained that his dad is innocent. So his whole life has been either devoted to getting his dad out of prison or becoming a forensic scientist or a superhero to help people not get in that same situation. Some hints have been laid out if you've watched Zack Snyder's Justice League, but in this movie he finally catches on to the fact that if he runs really, really fast, he can run back in time. So of course Barry, because he wants to save his mum, which is the whole heart of this thing, and to be fair, that's a good enough reason for me in my opinion, runs back in time, and all he does is just makes one little change so that his mother will not be left alone in the house to be murdered by an unknown force. All great. Except when he returns back from that point, he's attacked by a mysterious figure, gets thrown out of time into a point where he meets another version of himself, another Ezra Miller, an 18-year-old Barry who does not have his powers yet, and finds that the whole world is completely wrecked. He broke the universe. This simple change he did somehow reverberated backwards and forwards in time. Victor Stone is not Cyborg. There's no Wonder Woman. Aquaman was never born. Batman is now not gruff Ben Affleck, but in fact gruff Michael Keaton. Superman, nowhere to be seen. And now General Zod has arrived, the villain from Man of Steel, to lay waste to the world. And there's no one, no Justice League, no superhero left to defeat him. So Barry and his younger Barry must find a way to combat Zod, fix the mistakes that Barry has made somehow without having to undo that change of keeping his mother alive. If they can save this universe, his mother gets to be alive. But as with fixed points in times, things just continue to spiral completely out of control until Barry has to make that ultimate decision, that ultimate sacrifice that he has to do to fix the world. If you're familiar with the Flashpoint storyline, it's actually really great. I think most people would be even if you've never read the comics, because The Flash on the CW ran for 9 years. Grant Gustin's Barry Allen had his own little flashpoint in the back half of season 2, start of season 3. The iconic story from the comics is the same thing. Barry runs back in time to stop the Reverse Flash from killing his mother. But when he returns to the present, everything has drastically changed. Bruce Wayne is dead, and Thomas Wayne is Batman, his father, instead. Aquaman's Atlanteans are in a violent war with Wonder Woman's Amazonian warriors. There's no Green Lantern. Victor Stone, Cyborg, is the new Superman. Superman himself is held in some Black Ops Russian site, completely drained of his powers. It's a pretty dark, grim, violent, terrifying world that was expanded on in multiple other comics. There's some cool stuff in there about how Thomas Wayne's Batman's Joker is in fact Martha Wayne, who went insane because her son died. So there's some really cool stuff in there. And the whole point of that Flashpoint storyline was, even though Barry did indeed make the right choice and reverse his decision to save his mother to reset the world, he could never reset it back to the way it was, which resulted in a brand new universe. So the idea of this movie, from what I believed, was whatever happens, the way he resets the universe won't be the same, and then we can lead into the new James Gunn world of sorts. That's not really the case here, and unfortunately a lot of factors play into that. The main thing being that the DCEU has never really extended in such a way that you can do an engaging, interesting Flashpoint storyline. The entire movie is just set around the Man of Steel plot from 10 years ago. The very first movie in this whole world, it's just Zod coming to Earth and they have to stop him. Which just shows that with all the Wonder Woman films, all the Aquaman films, the Shazam films, the Suicide Squads, the Justice League, none of that over the past 10 years has really mattered or is different enough to play with in this movie, apart from some jokes here or there. Some positives for the movie. I don't like Ezra Miller. I really don't. But if you take aside how you feel about him as a person, they as a person, and focus on their acting in this, he actually does a very, very good job, because he's putting in double time playing the main Barry of the story, and then younger 18-year-old Barry. There are two very different Barrys at very different points in their life. And you realize watching the movie that it's actually sort of a buddy cop story, because the two Barrys, with their vastly different personalities, don't work very well together. They're constantly fighting and not getting along and screwing things up. And over the course of the movie, they have to learn to work together as a team and to respect each other's views and ways. Like the older Barry is jaded and cynical. The younger is more wide-eyed and wondrous, because they come from a world where his mother was never viciously murdered. And when you sort of see how those characters evolve over the film, you do have an appreciation for the fact that Ezra Miller is selling to you that these are two completely different characters that he is playing. If he didn't suck balls, I would honestly be very impressed and would recommend seeing the movie on that alone. And look, Michael Keaton is back as Batman. Temper your expectations. First off, he's not the Batman from 1989, 1992. It's not like he's continuing that Batman role. He's playing a new version of Batman in here that just so happens to look like Michael Keaton, and they play Danny Elfman's music. But it's not what has this Batman been up to? Has he come from his own universe? It's just, he's Michael Keaton now. The indifference to Batman in this movie, that he can just be different actors, and Barry is sort of just like, okay, whatever, I guess you're this person now. It's kind of insensitive and insulting to these people playing Batman, that you can just go, he's this other actor now, but that's okay because he's just the same. These people have played Bruce Wayne in very different ways. That's why people have favorite Batmen, because they're not the same. Adam West and Val Kilmer, vastly different. George Clooney and Christian Bale, vastly different. If you had George Clooney in a scene as Batman, and in the very next scene it was Ben Affleck, you wouldn't be like, oh, okay, it's different actors, but it's Bruce Wayne. It's not really. So that annoyed me. But if you want to go this movie just because the advertisements have been like, Michael Keaton's back, you will enjoy that, seeing him there. He's not nearly in the film as much as you would expect. He doesn't have a character arc or anything like that. He's just sort of there, but you will get your appeasement for that. Supergirl's also in the film. Barely. I would like to see her do more with that role, but she wasn't given that much to do, and she's sidelined off the board very quickly. Same with Michael Shannon being back as Zod. He's there to serve a purpose of being a threat, but there's nothing really there going on with him either. It's very much Barry, as it should be, because it's the Flash movie, but because of the Ezra Miller in the room, it makes watching the film kind of difficult. To be fair, I had a very bad opening experience to this movie. I hated the opening. It was Barry running around trying to save some babies falling out of a building, but they were CGI babies, which just looked awful. And while that was happening, the cinema that I was watching it in had some terrible feedback on the sound, so I could barely hear what was going on, and then there was this audio screeching, and it took too long for somebody to go, oh wait, that movie's not playing right, I should fix it. The humor doesn't really work for me. I'm not sure. I could be biased on this. Now, Andy Muschietti said recently, and it caused the internet to stir, that he'd never recast anybody else as the Flash in his movie because only Ezra Miller could play that role. And quite rightly, everyone got very angry at him because Grant Gustin has been playing the Flash for 9 years and objectively is very, very good. But I will defend him a little here in that I think he put his foot in his mouth. I don't think he meant that only Ezra Miller could play Barry Allen the Flash. I think what he meant was no one could play this version of Barry, which is a very socially awkward, very much autistic on the spectrum sort of character who has some very quirky mannerisms, the way they engage with people, closed offness, speaking to no one in particular. I have a brother like that, and I can see a lot of him in Barry's portrayal here. However, it's played for laughs. It's not like a authentic representation of that sort of on the spectrum character trait personality. It's just, ha, he's being silly. Shouldn't we all laugh? And that's a lot of the humor in here. The humor does not work for me in any way. It does seem like I'm ragging on the film. I thought I liked it more than than this when I left the theater, but I've had time to sit on it. I give it... Look, it was an entertaining enough experience. I did get some things out of the film that I wanted to see. I also got a lot of fun out of people watching. For the way this film has been sold about being such a pivotal DC movie, the post-credit scene alone is a joke. And when I walked out of the cinema, people were fuming. They were so angry. And their anger made me laugh. Because as much as I agreed with their anger, I had never really committed that much to this movie being as important as it was being made out to be. So I can let it roll off my back because I never really expected that much from it. Whether it was going to be the Ezra Miller issue or whatever, I did not have high hopes that it was going to blow me away or surprise me in any way. The idea of the Flashpoint storyline on screen, the banter between the two Barrys, having Michael Keaton back, and there are a lot of Easter eggs and cameos in here. They're clumsy and awkwardly shoved in, and a lot of them annoyingly CGIing dead people and being like, look, there they are, and it's terrible CGI. But if you're one of those people that's looking for that in their movies, just references and Easter eggs, you're going to get a lot of that in here. And I personally think there were some really interesting themes and ideas that they did attempt to tackle in here. The execution was a bit flimsy. Mainly the idea of grief, loss, acceptance, fixed points in times, what we can change, what we shouldn't change. If we have the opportunity, if we had the power to rewrite history, do we have the right to do so? So overall, I would give this a 6 out of 10. So there it is. That's my Flash review. I hope you enjoyed it. I got to wrap this up because I also have to review Elemental later in the week. So we'll wrap up by saying, if you want to go see The Flash, I won't stop you. If you have apprehensions about seeing it, listen to those apprehensions. You don't need to see it. Until next time, thank you for listening. Love and appreciate you as always. You've been spliced in later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.